Thank you. Now, they told me you were the replacement players for the Occupy Washington movement. Is that right? Is that who I'm talking to this morning? Well, it's my job to welcome you to the world's largest gathering of freedom-loving American patriots. Thank you for being here today. I came over here wondering if there was still any energy and enthusiasm left in the conservative movement. Is there? Is there any? So far, so good. Thank you. Because you're here to hear some great speakers, but we're here to get our batteries charged before this big election. This is the huddle of the conservative movement for the 2012 elections. This is where our ideas and our energy, our enthusiasm, our encouragement, we walk out of here reminded of what keeps us going, reminded of what makes this country great, and ready to take the battle to the other side. And I appreciate you coming here to encourage all of us. You're going to hear some great speakers, but I tell you, I know I can speak for a lot of them. We're here to get our energy and courage from you. So thanks for being here. I love the theme of this conference. We still hold these truths. Truth is what the conservative movement is all about. The truth that all people are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights, so the rights to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Conservatives are all about applying truth to public policy, applying the concepts that have proven to be true. You know, conservatism is not a political theory. It is a proven set of principles that have made life better and people freer and country stronger for years. And this liberal social democracies and central planning of economies, that's not a political theory either. It's a proven failure for generations, for centuries. And that's the truth. Conservatism is free people, free markets. It's a culture guided by Judeo-Christian values, strong military and an otherwise limited government. I mean, these principles should not be on trial in America. They should be held on display for the world to see and emulate. But let's talk about truth. You're going to hear a lot of speakers, and I just kind of want to frame the whole conference to whatever degree I can. And we need to start with the bad news and get it out of the way and move on to the good news. Our country has never been in as much trouble as we're in today. And I'm not exaggerating. We've never been at a point where our debt is larger than an economy, and with the Congressional Budget Office now saying that if we continue on the same track, we're going to double that debt. And there's not that much money in the world for us to borrow. We can't keep printing that much money. We've been doing it the last 2 years. Did you know the Federal Reserve has bought over half of our national debt the last 2 years? That can't work very long. We're in a deep hole. We're also at a point politically where nearly half of Americans are getting something from government directly or indirectly, and the other half are paying for it. The Democratic Party has organized those who are getting something from government, who want more from government. The rest of the country has got to be united. And we have to, as conservatives, as Republicans, pull together independents and libertarians, recovering liberals, everyone who believes in those principles of freedom. We need to pull them together and get them excited about what we're talking about. And you can really throw out the political terms and really just talk about common sense. And that's what I want to talk about with you for a few minutes. We are in trouble, but the way to get out of trouble is to remember what made this country so exceptional in the first place. And that's where we've got the big contrast with the liberals and with the Democrats. We're different from any other country in the world, and if we forget that, we cannot put this country back on the right road. America was always a bottom-up country, very individualistic, with personal responsibility, entrepreneurs by necessity, millions of people making their own decisions about what they value and what they want to do. every other country in the world. It had a dictator, a military leader, a king, a top-down economy, top-down culture with caste systems. But we were very different. We were very dynamic. And our whole free market system developed as a decentralized economic structure. Our politics were very decentralized, very local, very individualistic, family-oriented. This was different than anything else that had happened in the world. And the point of our Constitution when we formed this union was to put that into law, to write a contract that kept the federal government limited and kept political and economic power decentralized across the country. We not only divided power at the federal level into 3 branches, the Constitution specifies a very few things the federal government should do and says the rest should be for the states and the people. And the reason for that is it's because that's what works. That's the truth. And what happened to change that? I mean, I could spend all day talking about what happened to turn that around. But in the beginning of the 20th century, we still had very limited decentralized government. And things began to happen at that point. The federal government was limited not only by the Constitution, but by money. The only money it had was from various excise and sales and transactional taxes. It was limited in what it could do. So it focused just on making sure we had a good defense and making sure the economy worked. And that's pretty much all it could do. But we went and instituted an income tax. We formed the Federal Reserve. You know, FDR came in with trying to help the poor in retirement, which was a good idea, but a program that has become the largest tax for Americans and a slush fund for politicians that's now broke, but it's centralized power. You know, LBJ came along later with Medicare, an idea to help poor folks get health insurance when they retire. A good idea, but the way it was set up is it made people dependent on the government. Again, the government spent all the money and just botched the whole system to where we're trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. Presidents of both parties began to pull more and more power to Washington with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Education, Department of Energy with the EPA and the Commerce. And what you see if you look at it over a century is this decentralized, dynamic, individualistic country became more and more a top-down country. And in the last few years, we've seen that increase at an exponential pace. What Obama has done should show every American the difference in philosophy of a free people and those who believe in centralized government power. His stimulus was not based on free markets, but more government spending. You know, his health care plan was bringing the decision-making to Washington for our personal health care. Dodd-Frank essentially took over the financial and banking system. So folks, where we are as a country today is very different from what worked, where the federal government now virtually controls in some way, you know, our education, our health care, our transportation, our energy, our banking and finance, and through that housing, and through regulations and other laws, most of our private sector business activity. The good news is that the things that made this country great are still working. They're still working. People are still working hard, sacrificing, starting businesses, starting families. It's still out there. I visit them all the time, all over the country. I go through plants and businesses that people are working. But it's just been greatly diminished by a government that's spending too much and is oppressive. And the easy thing for us to remember as conservatives is big government, big debt means small economy, fewer good jobs. We need to explain that to the American people because we keep hoping, and this president is saying he's creating jobs. But folks, anything good happening in our economy right now is the result of Americans working hard, businesses trying to dig out from what this government's doing. There is nothing this president has done that makes this economy better. If you look at his stimulus, it failed. It made things worse. Unemployment went up. If you look at Obamacare, it's one of the biggest job killers in our country today. Dodd-Frank did not make it easier to borrow money and grow businesses. It made things worse. This president is grasping at straws, trying to take credit for what the American people are doing. But the reason we're clawing out of it is free enterprise and free people are resilient. And despite what this government's doing, it's still alive and kicking, and freedom is still here in America. But we've got to dig our way out of it. Let me talk about our Democratic colleagues for a second, because there's a lot of talk about our need as conservatives and Republicans to work with the other side, to cooperate, to compromise. I can guarantee you that Coach Tom Coughlin last week did not tell his Giants to go out on the field and to work with those other guys. You know, they weren't cooperating with Tom Brady. Now, the reason for this, and this really is a good analogy, the two teams had different goals. The Patriots were there to beat the Giants. The coaches said the only way we're going to come out of this is to go out and beat the other guys if we're going to get to our goals. Compromise works well in this world when you have shared goals with your wife, with business colleagues. When you have a shared goal, you can sit down and work together and compromise. But we don't have shared goals with the Democrats, folks. The scenario I presented of those who want concentration of power, all of those who are dependent on government and want more from government are organized under the Democratic umbrella now. The Democrats can't cut spending. Their whole platform is based on promising more from government and more government spending. When you talk about a balanced budget, it's like putting kryptonite in front of Superman. They can't exist with it. It would destroy their whole platform if we all had to get on the same page and had the same goal, and somehow we've got to figure out how to stop spending more than we're bringing in. President Obama called that an extreme idea. But a fifth grader could tell you if you're in a deep hole of debt and keep spending more than you're bringing in, something really bad is going to happen. And it will unless we stop this president and this Democratic Party. The good news is there are a lot of solutions. I call them freedom solutions. And when you hear speakers today, I think you're going to see the common denominator that the conservative solutions to where we are is going from a centralized approach in a concentration of power, where power corrupts, back to more of a decentralized approach. I mean, how do we solve the education problem in America? Let people make their own choices. Let competition work. Decentralize it out of Washington. The same with health care. We want people to have health care. But instead of government-run health care, we need to figure out how every American has access to affordable health insurance. And we can do that. We have systems to do it. We've got the solutions. If you look at transportation, they're trying to pass a bloated transportation bill now out of Congress. We only need about 4 cents out of every dollar to maintain federal roads, yet we take 18 and try to build local and state roads. Why not just take what we need up here, let the states make their own decisions instead of running it through our country? Folks, we don't have to spend taxpayer money to open up our energy supplies in our country. It would create more jobs, more revenue for states, more revenue for the federal government, probably do more to solve our debt and economic problems than anything we could do, and we don't have to spend a dime of taxpayer money. But we've got a Democratic Party and an administration that is not willing to do that because it decentralizes power. If we let states make more of their own decisions and the private sector run this thing. The president doesn't want the Keystone Pipeline. It doesn't cost taxpayers a dime. It creates millions of jobs. Well, not millions, but tens of thousands of jobs, obviously. Makes us less dependent on foreign oil in the middle of what appears to be a growing Middle East crisis. Who could say no? It doesn't make any sense. Folks, we're not talking about complicated political philosophy here. We've got a message to Americans that they can understand if we just have to get past the clutter. And a lot of it's going to be one-on-one. We're going to do everything we can to take those solutions to Americans directly. We're going to have a presidential nominee, and that presidential nominee is going to be conservative. He's going to talk about our ideas, regardless of which of the four we have. We need a candidate with character, with courage, and with the skills, the leadership skills to lead the greatest nation in the world. I just hope whoever our nominee is recognizes that every one of these four candidates have large followings because they're saying very important things. And we need to pull all of those things together, and whoever our nominee is carries those. We can't ignore any of them. And it's kind of good to see them all doing well at different points, because it scares them all. And it makes them all realize that that other guy has got something I don't have. And when we bring that together as a party, we're going to have a good president. But let me tell you how we can have a great president. Friends, we could put Ronald Reagan in the White House, but if Harry Reid is Majority Leader of the Senate, it's a waste of a good president. The Senate has been a black hole for the whole time that I've been in the House and the Senate. Even when we've had a slight Republican majority, these have not been conservative Republican majorities. We've compromised with Democrats. Every time we compromise with Democrats, we spend more, we borrow more, and we grow the government. We need to change the Senate. And it's obviously the president's important, but remember the legislation comes from the Congress. The budgets come from the Congress. We spend the money, far too much of the money. But any of the four that are running for president are going to sign good legislation if we send it over there. But I'm here, the one thing I'd like to leave you with is in the last cycle, I worked through what I call the Senate Conservatives Fund, which is just a website, senateconservatives.com, and a lot of you have helped with that. And I didn't know that it would have that much effect on the elections, but what it did is just create a conduit for Americans everywhere to help a few conservatives get elected to the Senate. You know, we raised over $9 million through this website last time, and it's not attributable to me. It's the candidates that we put up. And this is not a big contributor PAC. It's not one of those super PACs. The average contribution was $45. This was hundreds of thousands of Americans. A lot in California said, I can't have any impact on my race here, but I can help elect Marco Rubio in Florida. And you're going to hear from him in a minute. These folks, we helped a lot. We can't take credit for any of the elections, but we endorsed Pat Toomey when Arlen Specter was still a Republican. And Rand Paul, when some in the party didn't want Rand Paul, and Mike Lee, who was running against an incumbent. Ron Johnson, a businessman who is really, all of these folks. If you want to see, the Senate is different. These folks have just walked in the door. They're leading. They don't need love from the people who are here. They're ready to stand up for what you believe in. And we need 5 or 6 more like that in this election. I've already got 4 on our website, senateconservatives.com, and there are other good candidates, so if you're supporting others, I certainly don't want to offend you. But I do want to mention them. Some of them are probably going to be here. You'll get a chance to meet them. But one of the strongest, brightest young constitutional conservatives that I've met is Ted Cruz in Texas. I'd love to have him in the Senate if you can help with that. You know, Don Stenberg in Nebraska is a solid conservative who's going to come up here and fight with us if we can get him elected. Mark Newman, a legendary conservative from the 90s, is running for the Senate, and we need him back here. Josh Mandel in Ohio is the Republican pick, and just these 4 would make a huge difference and give us the majority, but hopefully we'll have 4 or 5 more that we'll get on the site and help. But folks, it really is the Senate. We need to keep a conservative House, but they've passed good legislation. It's dying in the Senate right now. If we can just get a Senate that can pick up those bills and take some votes, get them to a good Republican president, we can turn this thing around. But the key I found is not in the politicians in Washington. This is not our country. This country is for, of, and by the people. We saw in the last election that even a small number of people who get active and engaged can change this place, can scare this place, can make it start at least saying the right things. But it took more than 1 election to get us in this hole. It's going to take at least 1 more to get us out. But we need to get out this election because we can't go 4 more years of what we're doing right now. But the good news is this. You sit next to people every day in church, at work, soccer games, who don't even vote, who are not informed. if all of us go out and all the members of the organizations that are here go out and we get one person, a tax-paying, hardworking American who just doesn't like politics, get them engaged this year. Only 29% of Americans over 18 voted in the last election. You know, over 70% in Iraq did. It tells you something. So those of us who know better, who know what's at stake, have got to go out with all the energy and enthusiasm and optimism that we can share with this country, because we should be optimistic. This country is going to be the greatest country, greater than it's ever been. Those principles are still at work. We just need to reapply them. So I'm here asking for your help, taking energy and encouragement from you. The fact that you've gathered here means more to us who are on the battle lines here in Washington than you know. But we're counting on you to take the message to the people, because it's the people, the voters, who are going to decide this thing. And I'm convinced that after the dust settles in the 2012 elections, we're going to have conservatives in the White House and the Senate and the House. We're going to put this country back on the right track, and it's going to be because of you. So thank you for being here, and thank you for what you've done. Thank you.